welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children, the podcast where I share the recordings of the bedtime stories I've told my children over the years. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. In today's story, Flip Flop makes his journey to Mr. McGruder's Pangalactic Jokes and Gags Emporium. I hope you enjoy the story.
Flip-Flop got up bright and early the next morning. Even before the sun had fully risen, he was already dragging his joke case onto the Cat's Paw Highway and turning around 3 times, saying, "Cat's Paw Highway, Cat's Paw Highway, Cat's Paw Highway.
How big was
Take
his
me
joke
where
case?
I want to go." It was a little bit bigger than your suitcase.
Oh.
The Cat's Paw Highway took him very fast. And it took him much longer than it usually did. And he began to feel a little dizzy and a little sick to the stomach from having gone so fast for so long. But just about that time, he finally stopped and he looked around. He was no longer at the South Pole. He was standing on a beach, and the beach went up to a broad field. In the middle of the field, there were a number of great metal towers, and next to the towers there were rocket ships. Flip-Flop picked up his suitcase and hopped down from the Cat's Paw Highway and began to cross towards the giant rockets. There was a silver building in front of them that was sort of low to the ground, just a couple stories tall. It had printed across the front of it in red letters, "Galactic Tours." And Flip-Flop went in, and he went to the ticket counter, and he said, "I need a round-trip ticket for one to Mr. McGruder's Pangalactic Jokes and Gags Emporium." And the clerk looked at her to the list, and she typed for a moment into a computer, and she said, "Name, please?" And he said, "Flip-Flop." And she said, "Yes, Mr. Flip-Flop, I see right here. Do you have your space passport?" Flip-Flop said, "Yes, just in here." And he reached into the side of his joke case and pulled out a little silver sort of disc that the clerk took from him and put into her computer. And she said, Well, everything seems to be in order. That trip will be 50 gold pieces round trip." And Flip-Flop gave her a bill, a cat bill. It had footage of its face on one side and said 50. And she said, "Yes, we do accept cat currency here." And she took it and she put it into a drawer. And she gave him a ticket. She said, "Your rocket will be leaving in 20 minutes. That should give you just enough time to get suited up and get there." Flip-Flop gave her his suitcase, and she took it and put it onto a little moving conveyor belt. Then he turned and began to run towards the tower that she had told him was his rocket. 15 minutes was not a very long time to get ready to leave on a rocket ship. When he got to the rocket, he went into the metal tower and he rode an elevator up to the top. When he got to the top, he went in, crossing sort of a bridge.
You should get new jokes every time so no one will know what joke he's playing on them.
Yeah, he usually gets a few new things.
And
he gets a few new things and
he
he gets a
doesn't
few
use
old
his
jokes
old ones as much. Then
Well, some old jokes he loves, like whoopee cushion, and so he always gets some of those.
now I see.
But whenever there's something new he gets that he likes, he gets that. He got into the rocket ship and they showed him to where he could put on his space suit, and he had to go through the human-shaped ones and the dog-shaped ones, and he found a cat-shaped one. He put it on and sat down in a very soft seat that they used to cushion you when the rocket was taking off. So about that time that he got his seatbelt buckled, he heard them start the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3,
10, 9, 8,
2.
6?
Did I skip a 7?
Yes.
Oops. Well, it's too late to go back, though. 3, 2, 1. That's great shaking,
0, -1.
And Flip-Flop felt as if something were pressing against him, pushing him into the seat. And then he looked out a window and he could see the clouds whipping past the rocket and the ground rapidly growing smaller and smaller below them. And then soon, the sky outside the window was not blue anymore, it was black. You could see the stars. And Flip-Flop undid his harness at that point, and he began to float around the cabin.
Float?
Yeah, because he's off the Earth, so there's no gravity. You just float, you don't fall to the ground. He floated up to the front of the rocket because he wanted to see out, and he could see that the rocket was maneuvering towards a great round space station that had eyes painted on it and a big red clown nose. And as the spaceship got closer, he could see a docking port open in one of the nostrils of the big red nose. And the rocket ship flew right up the nose. And then the door closed behind them and they landed. And the pilot said, "We've arrived safely at Mr. McGruder's Pangalactic, Jokes and Gags Emporium. Enjoy your stay." And Flip-Flop got off and he picked up his joke bag and he went in. Mr. McGruder's was an enormous shop. It took up most of the space station that he was on. It had 3 different floors. First, Flip-Flop went and got the things that he knew he needed. He got a couple new whoopee cushions. He refilled his supplies of itching powder and laughing powder and hiccup powder and burp powder. And he got a new working fake claw that squirted. And he got a new fake flower that squirted. And a new fake pen that squirted. Ever since he had started having trouble with Sanguines, he had made sure that he had enough things that squirted, since Sanguines cannot tolerate water. And then he began to look around for something new, and he found several new things that he bought. He bought some chewing gum that when you chewed it, it turned your teeth black.
Did they stay that way for like 10 minutes or how long?
Until you brushed your teeth. And he found some fake rubber vomit that when you put it on the floor, it looked like somebody had thrown up. And he found some fake rubber dog poop that when you put it on the floor, it looked like a dog had pooped on the floor. And then he found a fake rubber chicken. He had no idea what he was going to do with a rubber chicken, but it seemed like a good idea at the time to buy it. He checked his suitcase and found that he still had room for 1 or 2 more things. So he thought for a moment, and then he began to look around, and he looked for quite some time. He looked at the water guns, thought about buying himself a new long-range water gun, and they were awfully expensive, and he really didn't have room for one in his suitcase. He saw a pack of gum that when you pulled the stick of gum out, it actually had a little snapper, and it snapped your finger. And
It what?
it had a little snapper, so like a mousetrap. A little wire that when you pulled the stick of gum out of the package, it snapped and hit your finger, and sort of stung a little bit. But Flip-Flop decided he didn't like that one. He thought it was sort of mean.
But he could use it on Sanguines.
He'd never offered a Sanguine a piece of gum before. He had no idea whether they liked gum or not. But what he finally settled on was a group of temporary tattoos. And they were all tattoos that you put on someone else as a joke. They were tattoos that you would, stick on someone while they were sleeping. They did not know you were doing anything. And they said silly things like, "I'm not as smart as I look." And silly things like, "I like to smell my own farts." And silly things like one that said, "Please squirt me." And one that said, "You can have all my ice cream." And Flip-Flop thought that he would have fun secretly putting these tattoos on people without them knowing it. Like a good place like the back of their neck where they wouldn't know they had it on, but other people could see it. And by the time he bought those, his bag was all full. And so he dragged it back. He paid for all his things. he stopped in to see Mr. McGruder himself, who always liked to chat for a while and talk about what was next in the world of jokes and pranks. Because Mr. McGruder thought that Flip-Flop was one of his best customers, he gave Flip-Flop a free fake rubber snake. Then Flip-Flop hurried off back to his rocket ship, and he checked his luggage and they put it on board the ship, but he took the snake on board with him. And he sort of wrapped it around his shoulders. He enjoyed seeing people look at him and then look back at him again as they noticed the snake. And then he flew home. And it was starting to get late in the day when he got his luggage back from the rocket ship. And he went back to the beach and found the Cat's Paw Highway and went back home to the museum.
Speaking of late in the day, it's late in the night.
With a bag full of jokes to keep him busy for the next few months.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's story, but questions and witty commentary were supplied by my children. The music was created by Brandon Thompson. Your reviews and personal recommendations are the main way that new listeners find the show, so thank you for spreading the word. I'd love to hear your feedback, so feel free to get in touch via email or social media, which are listed in the show notes. Until next time, I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.